are going to go and preview the entire 2024 NBA playoffs from the play-in tournament all the way to who will be crowned the 2024 Larry O'Brien Trophy NBA champions. Let's start with tonight, the first game of the docket, which will take place about right as soon as we get off the air. That being LeBron James, the Los Angeles Lakers, against Zion Williamson and those New Orleans Pelicans. 7-8 matchup in the West.
So we saw this game on Sunday. If the Pelicans had won, they wouldn't be in this situation because they would have been the 6th seed, and Phoenix with Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, and Devin Booker would have been in the play-in tournament instead. But like they have all season against the Lakers, the Pelicans laid a big fat goose egg, or I guess a pelican egg in this case, pun intended there. And, well, here we are. And I see no reason why this game tonight is going to go any differently than what we've seen from the Lakers against the Pelicans all season long. LeBron James, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because of how, crazy the hype around Zion was coming into his draft year. But LeBron seems to take that matchup personally when he goes against Zion. And, of course, Anthony Davis is going to take that matchup personally when he goes against New Orleans because that's where he starts.
Well, that's if Anthony Davis plays. We're assuming he will play.
That's true.
But right now it is unofficial. And we debated this last week, and I had brought it up to you, and now this situation has come to pass. If you're the Lakers, a very intriguing situation. I said last week right here on championship rings, if I'm the Lakers, I want to take my shot at the Denver Nuggets right here, right now in the first round. And if they beat the Pelicans tonight, they will have a chance to do just that. However, if they do not, you still would have an opportunity. You would play the winner of the Sacramento Golden State game, which would be a fascinating game tonight, which we'll get to in a moment. My biggest question about this game, because I agree with you, I think the Lakers will win this game. But if it's close in the fourth quarter, and the Lakers are maybe down 5 or 6 with 6 minutes left, do they waste a lot of energy to go and try and get this game? Or do they, in the back of their minds, and this is sort of true for New Orleans as well, sort of say, you know what, we have another game in our pocket. Let's not waste all our energy. We think we could beat Golden State or Sacramento and sort of pack it in at the end of the game.
Yeah, I've been hearing a lot on the various platforms and stuff about whether the Lakers should tank this game and go into that single elimination game like you're talking about against either Golden State or Sacramento. I presume it's going to be Golden State since Sacramento is without, I believe, Keegan Murray and Malik Monk. So I think that gives the Warriors the advantage. Nonetheless, though, the Nuggets have beaten the Lakers 8 straight times. Whereas, if I remember correctly, the Lakers won the regular season series against Oklahoma City 3.
And Oklahoma City is the youngest one seed in the history of the NBA playoffs. And the thing is about this year's NBA, I really do believe this year's NBA, we have an historic precedent that we've never seen before. Because
What's that?
There is a history of the NBA playoffs that Miami sort of broke last year. And it'll be interesting to see if that Miami sort of history continues, which is, unless you're a top 3 seed in the conference, you don't even get anywhere near the conference finals. And I believe that only 2 teams that have not been a number 1, a number 2, or a number 3 seed have won the NBA championship. That was the 1960s Boston Celtics with Bill Russell. And the only other team that did it was the Houston Rockets with Hakeem Olajuwon when they went back-to-back in 95. Now, that team was only a 6 seed because Olajuwon, if you actually look, was out for most of the regular season. That team was, really a 2 or a 3 seed but they fell because of his injury. So there's a historic precedent that basically says outside of the 2000 Knicks and last year's Heat, a lower seed cannot make a deep playoff run. But this is a different NBA. It's a changing of the guard NBA this year, where we have veteran guys, Kawhi Leonard, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, LeBron James, at the bottom of the conference. But we also have very young and ascending players. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, Anthony Edwards. You got the Orlando team with a bunch of young kids. Indiana, Tyrese Halliburton, who we'll get to, obviously.
Luka Doncic.
Luka Doncic, but he's been in that playoff position before. I'm just talking about young guys that have not either had a playoff series or not want a playoff experience.
I get what you're saying. But let me go ahead.
Go ahead.
So let me jump in super quick because you brought up an interesting point when you were talking about how the Rockets went back to back, and you had a really good Western Conference. It's that same situation this season, and you were talking about how the only reason the Rockets were a 6th seed that season is because Olajuwon was out for most of it. You look at some of these teams that are lower, you got Phoenix. We know all their issues that they've had. They're a 6th seed. You've got the Lakers with LeBron James and Anthony Davis. We know all their issues. They're a 7 seed. You've got Golden State and, again, all their issues. You get my point. The Western Conference is so deep.
It's so deep that the team that, by the way, just to refresh everybody's memory or in case you're new to the show, before the season, me and Josh made our predictions on who would be the representatives in the Western and Eastern Conference Finals as well as the champions. We had both picked a Lakers-Bucks Finals with the Bucks coming out as champions. Now, in that Eastern Conference Final, we both selected Milwaukee against Boston. Western Conference Finals, there was a Lakers, Golden State, Denver, Phoenix. It was sort of a 14 debate. We eventually settled on a Lakers, Golden State, Western Conference Finals because we thought the Lakers would match up with Denver in the second round. And I had said going into the year that one of the reasons why I doubted Denver to go back-to-back is because it's hard. And the NBA has ever been more talented than ever. But when you watch Denver, especially live, like I did earlier this year, you can clearly see why they are one of, if not the betting favorite to repeat. So with that in mind, I really do hope the Lakers win tonight because I want to see, for my viewing purposes, I want to see Lakers-Denver because I'm here to say that might be the best series of the entire playoffs.
That's a bold take. But I can totally see where you're coming from. Personally, I would put Mavericks Clippers ahead of it in the first round because of the history we've had between the Mavericks and the Clippers in the playoffs. I think this is going to be round 3 between them. So I think it's going to be a fantastic series. But I understand why you're saying Lakers Nuggets could be the best series.
Let's get to the second game tonight, which is Golden State Sacramento. You had already made your prediction that you think Golden State wins. I want to put this into perspective because I also agree with you. I think Golden State has the best player on the court in tonight's game. I think Steph Curry could have a reminiscent of what he did Game 7 in the first round last year against Sacramento.
Let me just say this. That Game 7 performance by Steph was one of the best performances.
The second best game of his career outside of Game 4 in the 2022 finals against Boston, which, if you remember, they were down 2-1 in that series, and he was chasing his first ever finals MVP. And that night, he pretty much closed the door on the Boston Celtics season with that performance.
Oh, yeah.
On an all-time stage.
For me personally, this is just me personally, that was the best performance of Steph's career, Game 7 last year in Sacramento. That's just my opinion.
You can make that argument. Now, what some people have started to bring up, but not a ton, this could be, if the Golden State Warriors lose tonight's game,
I know exactly
the
where
last
you're
game
going with this.
of the Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, Steph Curry dynasty, a Warriors dynasty that even though, hey, NBA has had a ton of dynasties in our lifetime, from the Michael Jordan Bulls to the Shaq and Kobe Lakers to the Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker Spurs, pretty much right here into the Golden State dynasty.
Don't forget Kobe Bryant, Pau Gasol, and the Lakers in the
Well,
2010s.
they won back to back, but they didn't have a sustained dynasty, I would say.
They were in the finals also in 2008 against
They
the
did.
Celtics.
They went 3 straight years, but they never even went back to a conference final. The team was old. They got blown up. They didn't have that sustained success.
Fair enough. And don't forget the Miami dynasty.
Well, yeah, but they only won 2 championships. Like it's hard. Like the LeBron thing for 8 straight years, I call LeBron doing it himself a dynasty. Is that Cavs team with only 1 championship a dynasty? Is the Miami team a dynasty? I think it's hard to make that case when Golden State and the Spurs are also in the middle of your own dynasty winning championships.
That's a fair argument. But anyway, I have heard this discussion about whether this could be the last game for Steo. I don't think it is because, like I said, I think Golden State wins. And if Golden State is able to capture that 8 seed, Oklahoma City better look out.
So this is where I'm going. This is why. So on Thursday, I'm going to make my NBA predictions as well, just for my straight podcast. I haven't recorded it yet because I need to wait and see who wins these games tonight. Because as much as I think, and as much as I love Denver, I think the Lakers could actually beat them this time around. I really do. Again, I think in a first round matchup, I think if you get your shot, you can get them. I do think, if Oklahoma City were to play New Orleans, they would beat New Orleans. But if they were to play the Lakers or Golden State, I don't think they beat either one of them. So it's really matchup dependent.
I think Oklahoma City could beat Golden State. But I do think if they were to match up, that series is going the full 7 games.
I tend to agree with you, and this is sort of the theme that I'll make. It's not true for every series in the playoffs, but I think for most series it's true. If you are the best player in the series or players, you're going to win the series. And experience matters. And we saw it in the Golden State Sacramento series last year. I think experience and the best player on the court in a potential Golden State Oklahoma series both win Golden State.
I can agree with you on that one. I would say Golden State would have the best 2 players in that series with Steph and Clay, but I would put Shai Gilgeous-Alexander third in that list.
I agree. So before we make, I guess, our official predictions, let's move to the East play-in real quick. Let's look at this fascinating game tomorrow night between the Sixers and the Heat. Because I'll be honest, I have leaned both ways. This is an even game to me where I can see both teams winning it. Does Jimmy Butler come out in the postseason? Because if you recall last year, Miami lost their first play-in game and almost lost their second and almost didn't even make the playoffs and then go on that magical finals run. For Philly, Joel Embiid sounds like he got hurt again. He missed the last game on Sunday. He can never stay healthy, which changes Philly's complete trajectory because they're pretty evenly matched up with the Knicks. They played the Celtics close last year, going to 7 games. But it all depends on health.
It totally does. I'll tell you this. If Joel Embiid was fully healthy all season, the Sixers would not be a 7 seed.
I completely concur. I think they'd probably be a 4 seed, maybe a 3.
Yeah, this is another situation, kind of like what we were talking about in the Western Conference, where they're just a seed by number. Philadelphia is not a 7 seed. Like, they're better than that. Miami tends to be better than an 8 seed. It's same
Miami
thing.
Turns it on in the playoffs, and we'll see this year. They get the production they got last year, which was incredible. Who do you have winning this game between Miami and Philly?
I'd go Philly more so, not because of Embiid, but I really like the backcourt duo of Tyrese Maxey and Buddy Hield. I
Uh,
think they have played so well
I
together.
think this is a case of home court advantage mattering. I think if it was in Miami, I would go Miami. Since it's going to be in Philly, I'll take the Sixers. I think we both agree whoever wins the Hawks Bulls matchup is not beating Miami or Philly. Do we both agree on that?
Yeah, I I feel so bad for Chicago though, because I like DeMar DeRozan, I like Zach Levine. I wish they could put it together. I
Hey,
really do.
but I mean, Kobe White and Nikola Vucevic, like they got some good players. They're not a terribly bad team.
Right.
Um,
That's what I'm saying. I wish they could figure it out and like become a legit contender of some sort.
so we both then have Philly going to the Knicks and Miami going to Boston. So let's kickstart what we think the first round's going to look like. Which for both of us, it sounds like we want to start out east. 8 seed Miami at number 1 seed Boston. A rematch of last year's Eastern Conference Finals. 3 out of the last 4 Eastern Conference Finals. We know the history with these two ball clubs. My biggest question is going to be about this series because I think Miami could push Boston the way Boston probably would not like to be pushed, and they have the better coach in this series. But is Miami going to be able to recapture that magic they did last year? Because it almost never happens 2 times in a row.
My bigger question is last year we saw like the the undrafted guys, Duncan Robinson,
Yep.
Max
Caleb Martin, Max
Caleb Martin.
Strus, Duncan Robinson.
Exactly. They got the complimentary play to Bam Adebayo, to Jimmy Butler. Can Miami get that same sort of magic or whatever?
Well, that's what I just said. Can they get the same amount of production from those other guys?
Right. I'm just
Again,
saying it in another way, I guess. But
I think they push Boston, though. I would say probably to 6 or 7, but I think Boston ultimately wins the series. Though, if I Boston, I would feel better about playing Philly, even though Joel Embiid is a mismatch. He's been obviously banged up, but just with that history in Miami, I would be scared to death to see Miami again.
oh, so would I. If I'm Boston, I would love to see either Atlanta or Chicago as
Well,
the
yeah,
8 seed.
obviously, but I'll be honest. If that happens, I'll be absolutely floored. Neither of
Yes.
those two teams are better than Boston or Miami. So if you take those two out, I'm saying out of Boston or Miami, or excuse me, out of Philly and Miami, I'd rather see Philly.
Yeah, I would rather see Philly because I'm going to be honest. Right now, Eric Spoelstra is the best coach in the NBA. I know the
Well,
Thunder's coach
I
just won Coach of the Year. Congratulations to him. But how Eric Spoelstra continues to do it year after year after year down in Miami is just incredible to me.
I think you can make a case for Ty Lue as well with the Clippers and what he's at advantage with that dysfunctional of a mess with Kawhi Leonard even now, which we'll get to.
I
Um,
can't wait to talk about
so
that
so
series.
let's move down then. Let's talk 2 versus 7. Sixers Knicks. Very interesting series to me. Now again, Joel Embiid's health may determine the series because as great as Jalen Brunson is, without Julius Randle, Hardenstein's a decent big, but would they have the ability to match up with Philly? Like this to me is a very even 7 game series if Embiid's healthy. I'll take the Knicks because I get home court in game 7, but it does feel like that could be upset alert again as long as Embiid's healthy.
It again, it's all dependent on Embiid. If he's healthy, I'm taking Philly in this series. But we don't know that. So I feel like I have to take the Knicks because of that question mark. I like Tyrese Maxey. I like Buddy Hield. I like Tobias Harris. So I think Philly would still have enough, but
Well,
without
without Embiid, we saw it in the regular season. They fell apart. And Max, he's not a number 1. He's a number 2. And on the contrary, Julius Randle goes down, and Jalen Brunson almost becomes damn near the MVP of the week
yeah.
and got the Knicks to the number 2 seed. So let's move on to the most interesting series in the East, I
Yes.
believe. or Milwaukee against Indiana. Now, again, this to me is all contingent on the health of the Greek Freak. But the biggest thing is, I've heard for years how great of a player Damian Lillard is. I've always pushed back a little bit on Damian Lillard as the notion that he's this superstar that can carry a team because I think he's more of a 1A. I think he's more of a Kyrie. I don't think he's a guy that can lead you to the promised land. He got to the Western Conference Finals one time, did not win a game in that series. So this is really, he's turned into now Portland out east, essentially, with Milwaukee without Giannis. And Indiana's not a great team, but Tyrese Halliburton's very good. Miles Turner's very good. They got a lot of very good players. But can Damian Lillard be that guy for 4 out of 7 games, or hell, even 2 out of 3 if Milwaukee needs to? Because if you remember last year against Miami, Josh, the one game the Bucks won in that series, Giannis didn't play.
Yeah, but I'll tell you this. Whether Giannis plays or not in this series, I'm still picking Indiana.
Okay, see, I disagree with that. I think in Milwaukee, if Giannis plays at least 5 out of the 7 potential games, I got Milwaukee.
I'm still taking Indiana because the Pacers have owned the Bucks this season.
I know they have, and Milwaukee's defense struggled, but most of those games were at least early in the season. I know they played a couple times late, but most of them were without Doc Rivers, the head coach. And yes, Milwaukee fell down to end the regular season. But don't you think that loss last year in the first round stings Milwaukee so bad? They sort of want to get that stench off their back this year, and it's an additional motivating factor. And I think Doc really made a good point at the end of the game Sunday when he said, hey, listen, everybody's doubting us. A lot of people are picking Indiana to win the series. We haven't beat them. Well, now it's our chance to shut them up.
But here's the thing also. Sure, Doc Rivers came in late in the season, and he wasn't there for most of the games against the Pacers. But guess what? Pascal Siakam wasn't there for most of the games.
That's a good point.
Against the Bucks.
You know what's funny? He's like the third option there, and you almost forget he's on the team now.
And yet, you look at how Indiana likes to play. They like to go zoom, 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 just get up and down the court. And that's giving Milwaukee fits all the time because Milwaukee likes to set up their half-court defense, and when they're on offense, Giannis is, let's walk the ball up and, so I can post up and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah,
but
Giannis is very slowly, and I don't mean to say this in a hurtful way, because if you remember a couple of years ago, Giannis was considered the best player in the world. And I think Giannis has slowly gotten into that Kawhi Leonard territory where it's like he's been always hurt. He's been hurt now the last 2 playoffs. He's undependable. He doesn't have that mean streak in him. And it's like, dude, prove once again you're a top player in the world, because there are people bypassing you, in my opinion. This is a big series for Giannis and his legacy. It's only gone down since he won that championship, something you wouldn't expect.
You know what's interesting? You bring that up. It's starting to look more and more like that championship run in 2021 was a fluke.
Oh, I said it at the time. I said that Phoenix team that got there was a fluke, and I thought that Milwaukee team that got there was a fluke, because everybody knows Kevin Durant essentially beat them in that game 7, except his little toenail was an inch on the line. Otherwise, the Bucks would have went home in the second round.
Yeah, and we know the Nets would have beaten the Hawks in the Eastern Conference Finals, and they would have probably beaten the Suns in the finals. I'm not going to lie there. But to me, this is the most intriguing series in the Eastern Conference playoffs. We'll get to Magic Cavaliers in a minute, but even though I'm a diehard Cavs fan, I'm more intrigued by Milwaukee, Indiana, because they're Central Division rivals, so they've already seen each other 4 times. Well, actually 5 times this season because of the play-in tournament, and we just talked about it. Indiana basically whooped them every time. And we know the history with the Pacers like stealing Giannis's 64-point ball or
Oh, I
whatever.
remember that. Yes, you're right. Way to bring that up.
So it does feel like there's a rivalry here. So whether Giannis plays or not, I'm picking Indiana. But I don't think this will be a sweep either way. I could see this series going the full 7 games. I really could.
Okay. About this 4-5 matchup. I texted you
You
on
did.
Sunday
You did.
after the Cavs. They literally pulled an NFL team that's trying to get a higher draft pick and tanked the end of the game against Charlotte to get this specific matchup against Orlando. You better be careful what you wish for, Cleveland, because if this thing becomes a disaster, which has more potential to than I think people want to admit, JB Bickerstaff's gone. Donovan Mitchell's on the trade block. If I'm Mitchell, I'm saying, get me the hell out of here. This whole thing could blow up in Cleveland because I personally think outside of Donovan Mitchell, you can make an argument the second best player in this series is Pablo Banchero, and we're going to find out if Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, if the lights are too bright again for this Cavs team, because while Orlando is young, they got ball players, man, and the one thing they got is a freaking coach.
Oh, yeah. Jamal Mosley has been fantastic as Orlando's head coach.
Meanwhile, our coach is out here arguing like he's a football coach.
Yeah, I'm not sure what JB Bickerstaff is doing at times. I have to admit that. But if we lose to Orlando, it's going to bring back so many memories of 2009. You know, we need to
Rashard Lewis, Hito Turkoglu,
Jameer Nelson, Rafer
Nelson.
Alston, Dwight Howard. But you look at this Magic team, they not only do they have Paolo Banchero, they also have Mo Wagner, Franz Wagner. Jalen Suggs has been fantastic since they drafted him out of Gonzaga. They've got Cole Anthony, Jonathan Isaac. This is a very good Magic team.
It is. Now, the only thing is they're all young. Could they be like the Cavs last year and forward in the playoffs? Absolutely. But I'm telling you, I think this is not a great matchup for the Cavs. I would have rather, me personally, I would have rather played Indiana. I'm just being honest with you.
I will definitely hear your argument on that, and I'm not gonna push it under the rug and say no, you're wrong and
the
all
thing
that.
about Orlando is they're big and they got multiple bigs. They don't just got two, they got like 4 or 5 bigs they can keep throwing at you. And our guys don't shoot well from the outside.
Yeah, I preferred Orlando because we seem to struggle against Indiana this season.
We struggled against Orlando too. I mean, we split the series against them.
You do have a valid point, but like in the last game against Indiana, it just felt like Siakam and Turner were just getting whatever they wanted. So I'm like, I'd rather not play against them. I'd rather take my chances against Paolo Banchero. That's no disrespect to Banchero in any way. I think he has the potential to become a great player, but I wouldn't put him on. He's still young, like you alluded to, whereas Siakam, Turner, they're more veterans in this league, so they're more experienced. So that's why me personally, I preferred the matchup against Orlando.
Okay, how about the Western Conference? Let's start with what we assume will be Golden State as the 8th seed against Oklahoma City as the 1.
This series would be fascinating if we end up getting it. I mean, Chet Holmgren, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander against Steph, Clay, Draymond. Oh, it would be so good. 2 of the loudest arenas in the NBA. That would be must-see TV. I fully believe that.
Yeah, I agree with you. Now, you said that you think Oklahoma City probably beats Golden State, but in 7, is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah.
I think it'd actually be Golden State in 6. I don't even think it goes to
Ooh.
7. I think Golden State would steal one on the road. They would hold serve. Steph Curry, the best player in the series. Once again, the veteran is there with Curry. I'll take the 8 seed Golden State. So that leads us then to Lakers Nuggets. Now I said I think the Lakers have a shot to knock off Denver. I don't think they would, but I think that this, as I alluded to earlier, would be potentially the best series in the playoffs. And I got this thing going 7 back to Ball Arena in Denver, and a Nikola Jokic great run and Jamal Murray run in the fourth quarter to seal it. I think the Lakers would be ready. I think they'd give Denver everything that they can handle in round 1.
It's interesting you say that because when you look at this recent run by the Nuggets against the Lakers, yes, Denver has won 8 straight, but it's not like any of those games have been blowouts.
And that's why I think this series will be closer than a lot of people think, because all 4 games last year went down to the wire. Denver just locked it up in the fourth quarter. 2 of those games, I believe, would absolutely flip and go the Lakers' way, because that's the way it goes in real life when you talk probability, and that's the way it goes in sports. Sometimes the breaks goes your way, sometimes it doesn't go your way. And again, a fresh LeBron at the start of the playoffs, to me, as well as Anthony Davis being healthy, the Lakers hope will be a big difference to them, as opposed to them having to battle 6 or 7 with Oklahoma City and then a Dallas or a Clippers to get to Denver in the Western Conference Finals.
You know what's interesting when I look at this series? It feels like the two duos almost cancel each other out in terms of like how they play against one another.
You
I know.
could make that argument, yes.
So for me, it kind of like what we were saying about Miami earlier. It comes down to the role players for both of these
Adding
teams.
Michael Porter, KCP, Reggie
Bingo.
Jackson, those guys trump the Lakers. I agree with you. So
Bingo.
so then you get to the 3 versus 6 in the West, which is Minnesota and Phoenix, which to me is a very interesting series that could go either way. I don't love the way Phoenix is constructed. I've said that all year. I think Devin Booker and Bradley Beal are essentially the same player. They don't have a lot of depth. I'm interested to see Anthony Edwards on this big stage. He's been in the playoff series before, but not as a favorite. They played Denver okay, decently a year ago, but now you have Karl-Anthony Towns, you have Rudy Gobert. I think Minnesota's size is what's the difference in that series and why they probably win it. But there's another one I could see going 6 or 7.
See, I actually have Phoenix winning this series because, yes, I like Anthony Edwards, but Karl-Anthony Towns just got back from an injury.
He did.
It's kind of like what we were talking about with Joel Embiid. Is he going to be fully healthy? I don't know. And Rudy Gobert, he hasn't always showed up in the playoffs.
He's never shown up in the playoffs.
Yeah. So, and when you have Kevin Durant sitting on the other side, that's a scary
I know.
proposition.
It's hard. But again, youngs versus veterans. I completely agree. I could see Phoenix winning it. The problem I have with Phoenix is if 1 or 2 of those guys have an off night shooting, they don't have a great bench. Grayson Allen and maybe like one other person. But where are they going to get that production from if they're all not on? I could see them, like, Phoenix is a team that can beat you by 30 and then get blown out by 30.
Yeah, they don't really have that middle ground is basically what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I totally see that perspective as well. But because I'm not feeling totally confident in Karl-Anthony Towns in his health, mainly, I would go with Phoenix.
Okay, I know you want to talk about this series, so let's get to it because we're going to go for the rest of the playoffs fast. We've already gone way over on the time limit for this segment. Clippers, Mavericks.
I cannot wait for this series. For me, this is the best series of the first round, other than Bucks Pacers. Because they've met twice in the playoffs previously, with the Clippers coming out victorious in both. But the last time they played each other, it went the full 7 games. You've got Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, James Harden, and you have storylines with each of them. And then on the other side, you have Dallas with Luka and Kyrie. How will they play together in the playoffs? Because we've seen what Kyrie can do in the playoffs. Obviously, we know what happened in the 2016 finals. We've seen what Luka can do in the playoffs. Remember the series against Phoenix just a couple years ago. Now we get to see them together going against Kawhi, Paul George, James Harden. I'm going to find my popcorn and I'm going to try and watch every single second of this series because I think it's going to be must-see television.
I think it will, but it all depends on the health of Kawhi Leonard, who every year, and this is my biggest problem with the guy who I don't even usually call him by his name. I don't know if you know this or not. I call him number 2 because I believe he is literally a robot. He doesn't talk. He doesn't have a cell phone. He flanked LeBron and AD at the altar for Paul George, essentially, 4 years ago. He's been riding the same truck for 20 years. Kawhi Leonard is just a different cat. But you cannot deny that number 2 is probably the best mid-range shooter I've ever seen. He just gets buckets whenever he wants. He's still probably the best on-ball defender in the NBA. My biggest thing is here, I have always been very wary of a ball-centric, dominant team in the playoffs. Luka is great, and Kyrie and him have been playing well, but they haven't played the greatest competition, even though they are in the West. They've dealt with a lot of resting teams in the stretch when they got hot, and I don't think they have the wing ability or the defensive prowess to match up great with the Clippers when the Clippers are all healthy, and I think the Clippers have the better depth and the better coach. For all those reasons.
I don't know about that.
Oh, Ty Lue is the top 2 coach in the league, right there with Spoelstra. He's a better coach than Jason Kidd. Absolutely,
Jason Kidd has been a fantastic coach for the Mavericks.
Okay. Tyronn Lue has been a terrific coach for years in the NBA. Jason Kidd's been a terrific coach for a year. He was horrible in New Jersey. He was horrible in Milwaukee. He's on his 3rd stint now. Tyronn Lue has never had a bad day as a head coach in the NBA. With that being said, I think if Kawhi Leonard's healthy, Clippers win in 7 again.
I gotta go with the Mavericks in 7 as well. I agree with you about this series going 7, but I like the Mavericks. I love the additions they made at the trade deadline by getting Daniel Gafford to add size. PJ Washington has been fantastic for them at the small forward position. They don't have to rely on Luka and Kyrie. They can go to others. The Clippers have to rely on Paul George, Kawhi, and James Harden.
Well, I would argue Dallas has to rely on Luka. If Luka doesn't have a good game, Dallas will get killed.
They still have Kyrie, though.
Yeah, but guess what? Kyrie can only score you 20 to 25, and he's not the same guy he was 8-9 years ago.
That's a fair point.
Kyrie is the complement to Luka now at this point.
But is James Harden the same player he was?
James Harden's absolutely not the same player, which is why if the Clippers don't. But if the Clippers don't have Kawhi, they're not going to win the series.
So we both agree Kawhi is the most important player in the series, then?
Yes, and I would argue the second would be Kyrie. Because I think if Luka doesn't have Kyrie, it's a different Dallas team too. You don't have that second score.
And that might be why the Clippers have won the previous 2 playoff means with Dallas. With Dallas.
We got to talk second round now. So in the East, we both have Celtics, Cavs. I'd give the Cavs a game, but this would be a slaughter. And
I don't think so. I don't think so.
The Cavs would not be ready for Boston. The Cavs.
Have you not seen Did you not see what we did against Boston last year? We
Do you
came back.
not do you not know that I don't care because we don't have a coach and we don't have toughness and we have the flakiest and weakest team in the history of the NBA that doesn't know how to inbound?
I would have Boston winning this series, but I got Boston in 6.
I'll say this to you. If the Cavs were in the West, they would not be a playoff team. I put that out there. I think the Cavs are only a 4 seed because they are in the weak Eastern Conference and they took advantage of beating the Wizards and the Raptors and the Pistons and all these and Charlotte and all these bad teams at the bottom of the conference because this team is not very good. And the reason why they should beat Orlando is because they have the playoff experience. But this team would not be ready for the physicality to go into a TD Garden. And the Celtics are not that great, by the way, either. They are just taking advantage of the biggest Mickey Mouse Eastern Conference in history because if Boston was in the West, they'd probably be a 5 seed. And I'm not even joking.
I mean, with their record, they'd be the 1 seed.
They would, but again, how much of that record is you're beating up on the Hornets, the Wizards, the Pistons? Mostly all the bad teams outside of the Spurs and Utah are in the East.
That is true, yeah. And yet somehow the Cavs lost 2 out of 3 against the Hornets.
Because they're the Cavs. They're not a great team. They're good when pressure's not on them. As soon as you put pressure on the Cavs, they burst like a pipe.
So we agree the Celtics are winning this series.
Yes. Now to the other series. You have Indiana against New York. I would have Milwaukee against New York. I think we're getting a Celtics-Knicks Eastern Conference Finals. I'll just say that.
That would be I would tend to agree with you. Although I could see without Julius Randle, I could see a world where Indiana upsets New York.
You think there's a world where the Pacers get to the Eastern Conference Finals? I don't see that at all.
I could see it, yeah.
That to me, they would be the Hawks of 2021. They'd be a fake Eastern Conference Finals team. They're not that good.
I really like Tyrese Halliburton.
I think he's good. I don't think he's a superstar. Like, I don't think he's a superstar. I don't think Miles Turner is. I don't think Siak. I think they're all very nice players.
I really like this Pacers team. I mean, I was scared to death when we played against them on Friday. I'm like, shit. I don't want to play against them in the playoffs. And the fact that we had to beat them in order to clinch a playoff spot, I'm like, oh God, no. No.
So would that be your official prediction then? Indiana over New York in the second round?
I'm going to go with it. Yeah. Indiana over New York.
So you have Pacers Celtics East Finals. I have Knicks Celtics. Moving to the West then. So it would be Denver taking on the winner of Minnesota Phoenix. I think Denver would win either series. By the way, I think they'd crush Phoenix if Phoenix wouldn't have the size to deal with them. I think Minnesota would be an interesting matchup, and I think Denver would ultimately win out in 6.
Yes, I agree. I've got Denver.
And then the very interesting one to me is whether OKC advances or not, taking on the winner of Clippers Mavericks. Because in my bracket, I have Warriors Clippers. You have Mavericks Thunder.
Mavericks Thunder. If we get that series, oh my God, that would be amazing. Holy shit. I would love to see Mavericks Thunder.
I would not. I would much rather see Clippers Warriors. I'm just being I'm a veteran guy. I'm not into all these young guys in the playoffs.
That's where you and I are different because I'm more into the young guys.
I'm not a young guy when it comes to the playoffs. I think the NBA playoffs are about veteran leadership, veteranness, and toughness.
Yes, but we gotta pass the torch at some point. So
we do, but are these guys ready? That was my whole question to start this podcast saying. We're gonna find out. We're gonna find out.
Give me a Mavericks Thunder series.
Well, who would you have winning that series?
I would go with the Thunder, but
okay.
I'm going to say Thunder in 7.
So you think Thunder, Denver, 1-2 Western Conference Finals. I'm going to say If Kawhi Leonard is healthy throughout this entire playoff run, I think we get Clippers, Nuggets, Western Conference Finals, which ultimately, by the way, I think we are going to get a Denver-Boston NBA Finals. I'll just say
I
it.
fully agree. I think it's going to be Denver Boston. That that's the matchup I think everyone wants. And though Boston would have home court advantage, they don't have an answer for Nikola Jokic. They
So
don't
you
have.
got Denver, and how many games do you think it would be? Because Boston would have home court.
Yes, Boston would have home court, but Denver's not afraid to go in there and win a game on the road.
I agree with you.
So I would love for it to go 7, but I think it's Denver in 6.
And I agree with you there. So at the end of the day, we mostly disagree on the first and second round, but we have Denver, Boston, NBA Finals, Denver winning in 6. That was our full NBA playoff preview.